So I'm Aaron Webster. I'm Burton Albion's player care representative.
All right. So you were a player at Burton. You mind just sort of explaining your playing career at the club?
Okay. Where do I bloody start? I've played for Burton Albion for 17 years of my whole football career. I've made 591 appearances for the club, scored 101 goals, played in numerous positions. When I first started at Burton, we was in kind of Dr. Martin's Premier, and then on this roller coaster journey, it finally took us to the Football League and League Two. After all my playing days now, I've been working at the club for the last 8 years within the academy, and majority of my time's been with the community trust as well. So 25 years of my life has been kind of dedicated to Burton Albion on and off the pitch.
So your role is player care. What is that? Quite simply, what is the sort of job description of a player care?
Player care for me is being a support mechanism to young and old footballers. As people, it doesn't matter what age, we're all going through different things, and for me, I would want every boy and girl in our building to know that there's someone there who they can kind of lean on, get support from, get advice from, of any kind of conversation, whether it's an easy one, whether it's difficult, just so they know that there's someone there who cares and will kind of go the extra yard to try and support them and help them in any kind of way.
So when you finished playing, a lot of players go into coaching. Why did you want to go into the player care side as opposed to sort of being out on the pitch, doing drills and balls?
I still coach as well. Predominantly my role is player care though, but I think even with coaching there's still an element of care and looking after the boys or girls you're working with. Man management, I think, is really important, not just in football but in any workforce, whether you're on a building site, in an office, anywhere. If you've got a kind of manager or a leader who you know who's going to look after you, you know who's going to kind of give you the kick up the bum when you need it, who's got that so many different personalities where you know you can trust and work with them. I think that's kind of what I want to be to young aspiring footballers. One day it may be a harsh conversation, it may be full clarity and reality of not so nice words, and another day maybe a hug. But I think working with me, I think reality and realism is the way I like to kind of work with boys, and just so that they always know where they stand, kind of a thing, and if there's elements we need to improve on something, that's something I would do to try and support them. It may have to be in a nicer way. The way you word and your language of conversation is really important in that. But I do like to build relationships and get close to people, and just try and give them all the support I can.
So how does sort of, I guess, player care and care and support in general compare now? How does it compare to when you were a sort of 15, 16-year-old player coming through an academy?
I think it's very different, and I think that's for the better. I think back then, I think people still struggle now to open up and talk to people, and but it's great that social media can help, and the nice side of social media anyway, the be kind stuff, your hashtags of men not being isolated or being alone. I think there's definitely more like scope on mental health, and there is room now for men and females to come out and speak, and going back to kind of years ago, it was more unheard of then, kind of a thing. So there wasn't such roles as player care back then, where you kind of had to bite the bullet, and yeah, if you got told off, you got a shell in, you got released, you were left to your own devices to kind of get on with it and show your own kind of grit and resilience. And in a way, that kind of made me who I am, but I suppose it as well, it's kind of guided me to be in this role that I'm in today.
I think you just mentioned there being released. I think for me that's kind of what started this whole project, and kind of the most sort of talked about sort of mental health element. Just how tough is being released? How did you react when it happened to you as a young player? And what are now the provisions which Burton and football in general do to help support players post being let go?
I think it's the toughest thing in football, whether you're a player and as well, if you're a coach or if you're working on the care side, it's the part of the job where you don't want to be told you're not getting a new contract, whether for whatever reason, or if you're actually the member of staff saying we're not going to give you another year or another contract. So yeah, it's the ugly side of the game, and people struggle, and they struggle with the news. When I was 16, I got released by Coventry City, and like we just touched on, there was no one in kind of in the care roles where you're left to pick up the pieces. So my mum was left to pick up the pieces at home. Luckily for me, I had a good support network around me at home with my uncles and my mum and my family. And even the PE teachers at school, they knew, they saw a talent in me, and they kind of advised me on what I should do next, kind of a thing. But I think everyone's struggle is a bit different to the other. Like I said, I was lucky that I had a good support network around me at home, but it's still devastating news. It was the first time in my life I was told I wasn't good enough to play football. So I remember literally not playing football for 3 months, and yeah, it knocked me. But luckily, I got the football boots back out, and I was kind of mentally strong enough to try and go again. And luckily, my Burton Albion career started then. But now I'm doing the kind of opposite job, where I'm trying to support the young lads getting released. Every phone call is different. Every boy takes it differently to the other. There's no one kind of same situation, and it's tough. It's tough. It's earth-shattering, it's dream-shattering at times, and but I've been through that process. I've got an empathy with these young boys. Like I said, they're not easy phone calls, but hopefully from the boys' side that they know that there's someone who has an empathy with them, who's been through that, and fortunately, I was still able to play 600 games for Burton Albion and get to the Football League. So being released doesn't mean that that's the end of your football career.
So you mentioned sort of speaking to the boys and stuff, and now this support is there where it wasn't before. Are players taking up this care, do you feel? Because I think a lot of, with mental health and stuff like that in general, there's so many charities and organisations now, which is great, but there's still an issue, particularly with blokes, about actually taking it up and talking and realising that they're struggling. Are boys, do you feel, again, maybe not just at Burton, but overall, when they're getting released and they're told about this, do they take it up? Do they think, I need this, or do you think there's still an issue of them maybe sheltering away?
Yeah, I think everyone's different. I think with the more kind of the more player care is set into football clubs in the future, I think young boys and older players will want to talk more, especially if they've got relationships with people in care, or if they've got an empathy, if that person's had a similar kind of football career. I think over time that will help young footballers speak a lot more. At the minute, there's still maybe that bit of resistance, but yeah, we're trying to break barriers, and in football, at football clubs now, where there's got to be support. Just because you're not good enough for one club does not mean you're not good for another club. We're a football family, so even at Burton Albion, if we decide that a boy's not going to go through our kind of ranks, that's not to say he's not good enough to go down the road at Stoke, or if he has to go back through the non-league pyramid to come back in the Football League like I did. Every boy has a different kind of journey, and us as members of staff, us in like with duty of care, we've got to help that, even more so when they're not in the building with us.
When I think the main sort of press around academies, and particularly that release process, is quite negative, I think it's mainly looking at these sort of horror stories of the kid who's really can't handle it and does something terrible. Do you think there's fair representation of all the good work that academies do in the media? Do you think you get enough credit when you introduce something really good like an aftercare program or whatever, or do you think there's a sort of element of sensationalism, searching for these sort of more dramatic headline-making stories?
I think that's just football in general, isn't it? I don't know. I'm probably a little bit biased being an ex-professional as well, where you're not everyone's cup of tea. You get good money. You get, as a footballer, they say, you're looked after. So there's stigma around football, even though it's kind of the most popular sport going. There's still, still as people and fans, we still want to ridicule it as well, because we just want everything to be too perfect, don't we? So that probably stems with the same with filtering down into your academies and your grassroots. We're always going to, as people, we always want more. We always want to know more. We always want everything to be perfect. Life isn't perfect, man. We'll always try and strive to make it better. So probably similar to the football, academies get a little bit of a bad reputation when you hear the horror stories of the releases, when boys are isolated and mental health plays a part. But we're trying to be better. We're always striving to be better, and that's why even now player care, every club's going to need someone within that role coming up with this season, where before, I think us as Burton Albion, we were one of the only kind of cat-free academies who had someone in that role within the club, where now, with the backing of the Premier League and the Football League, every club's going to need one. So that's a good step in the right direction. So I think there's always going to be questions around football clubs and what we can do more, and I think we're answering some of them questions even more so now with these care roles going into place. So
obviously player care is still, I guess, relatively new and still evolving. What do you reckon the next steps for it are? What can it do better that perhaps it's still not doing or it's still working on, and how far do you think it can go? Maybe like if it didn't exist when you were playing 20 odd years ago, 20 years time, what's that going to look like? What's the player care?
I think the sky's the limit for player care, and like we've just spoke about kind of my time of being a teenager and being released, where it wasn't around then, and that was 25, 26 years ago. Fast forward to today, there's roles in every club for this kind of work, and in a few years' time, like I said, there is no real ceiling to where it can go. Education programs. Actually, some boys might not want to be footballers. They might say that and be part of a system, but they might not be. So what does education look like if they're told they're not good enough? Do they still want to stay in the game? Are we helping them to get another job within the game? Are we working with kind of education and colleges to help boys go and get a degree? And you might not be playing in front of 20,000 fans at the weekend, but you could be a physio. You could be in sports, kind of journalism, football's the passion, but there's so many different kind of little crossroads, and yeah, it's like you're from London, aren't you? The London Underground it's a big mess, isn't it, of lines and angles. That's what football's like. Yeah, the actual being a footballer, being on the pitch might be in the middle, but there's angles of care, injury prevention, analysis. There is a lot to it. When we're releasing boys, are we finding out, and are we doing enough to keep these boys and girls on great paths to becoming the next sports journalist, the next physio? Because sometimes the football and the kind of the mentality, it's not for everyone. When we're all young, we think that. As we get older, sometimes we realise that, bloody hell, I'd always say it's the best job in the world, but it's tough as well, and it's not made for everybody.
So you're sort of talking about, I guess, the players just don't end up getting a career on the pitch. The exact numbers are something like, of the 12,000 boys play academy football, I think it's like only 98% will make a first team appearance. As the academy in general, how aware do you make the sort of players of these statistics? Because on the one hand, if you tell a 98% chance you're not going to make professional football, it could dishearten them, but at the same time, there is surely an element of responsibility just to sort of maybe keep everyone grounded a bit, and that you need to explore these other options. Is that a thing which you, is it part of your player care role? Is it something at Burton that you make players aware of?
Definitely. As coaches, as people in care, we're kind of juggling plates really, because like, I think if you do delve into it, the stats wise, like you say, they don't bode very well. But the beauty of that is, it doesn't stop young boys and girls wanting to be footballers as well, because it's a dream. Dreams are there to be chased. But us as a football club, us as kind of responsible professionals, we've always got to kind of bang on about what it takes, what can happen, the numbers who don't make it. So even in our induction night with the academy yesterday, we're still talking about that. We don't want to paint the picture of negativity and trying to get in young footballers' heads that you are going to get released and it happens, but it's that word of reality again, that it can happen. Don't get me wrong, enjoy your time in our academy, in any academy. Go and give it your all. Learn off people, develop. You may do that all to the T, but you still might not be a footballer. So yeah, enjoy it while it happens, while you're in there. Learn as much as you can, but you've got to enjoy it. And but there's, like you said, the numbers, there's a possibility. So we like to be as honest as we can with the kids without overdoing it as well. So because they're only young as well.
I think so. We've talked a lot about maybe like the big stuff like being released, but on a day-to-day basis, what kind of issues do players come to you, and what can they come to you? Can they literally come to you about anything in their personal life, or is it more football-related issues like injury or not being selected and stuff like that?
For me, I would want a young footballer to feel that they can come and speak to me about anything. It doesn't just have to be football related. Me trying to build that relationship with the young player is asking questions. What happened at college? What happened at school? You got a girlfriend? These are all little important kind of questions for me, where sometimes the boys don't want to give back. Some are really open, but I think it's them icebreakers of, it's not just about football here. Everything around you is important, not just what you produce when you're in Burton Albion kit or when you're playing a game or training. So for me personally, yeah, I have a lot of different conversations with our boys across different age groups, and some of it can be football related, dealing with an injury, dealing with not getting picked, dealing with our coaches kind of give them feedback after a game, how they're going to take that into the next game kind of thing. or it could be something at home which is probably a little bit more kind of delicate and a little bit more serious, where we have to like sit down and maybe have a proper conversation with parents involved. But yeah, it's a very, very wide span and very, lots of variety of what our conversations can be.
So, did you have this kind of relationship with your coaches as a player? And if you didn't, would you have liked this? Do you think it would have helped you get through maybe difficult parts of your career?
That's a good question. I think kind of what I do today, kind of everything leads from my own experiences in my life. So whether that was kind of if I was supported well by a coach or if I wasn't, or what I could see, how teammates were kind of treated, and I think having kind of a 17-year career here at Burton, I've seen a lot of things. A lot of the time it was more positive than not, obviously going from the kind of lower steps of non-league and finally getting to like League 2, but there was times where I saw some things they're not so good about the job, whether that happened to me or other people. So I think them real life experiences of being in the mix and in the middle of it, I think that bodes me really well for the kind of role I'm in like right now with our boys. And excuse my language, but I'm not talking bullshit to you lads. It's kind of real and I've seen it, kind of a thing. So I mentioned it before, it's the best job ever to be a footballer if you love the sport, but there's difficulties there. And even a little thing like, what do I remember from my career? So I went on trial with so many different football clubs when I was coming through at Burton. I was doing really well for the youth team. And I went to Man City on trial, Derby, Birmingham, Sheffield United. But then when I'd go to these clubs, I'd go and sit in the change room in the corner on my own, and I wouldn't really be introduced. The lads weren't really warming to me because they kind of saw me as a competition where I might have come for their spot, which is fair enough. So there was no real warmth when I was younger going out on trial at clubs, and looking back, that showed in all my performances training with them players, because I wasn't made to feel part of things. And so even now, going back to Burton Albion, if we ever had someone on trial or a new signing in the summer, I would always think about how I was kind of mistreated at these clubs on trial, where I'd go and introduce myself to a new trialist straight away, try and make him feel part of it. And I was used to obviously have the players' kind of feelings at heart, but Burton Albion as well. I always wanted the club to progress, so I always used to think if I could make someone feel part of it straight away, he could deliver 10 or 20% more of his game on the pitch, and that would help him and the club. So I think little things like that, they will always stay with me, even like now when we have guys in on trial here. It's a part of my responsibility, where it's the same mentality of, can we get his training kit for him straight away? I'm introducing myself, telling him about me, why I'm here, and making him feel part of the furniture, even if he's been in the building for 5 minutes. And that comes from my personal experiences of being a player.
Right, final sort of 2 questions, because I'm going to sweat through my top.
I know, tell me about
it. So would you say, the main sort of misconception someone might have about a football academy who's never been part of one, and what would be the one bit of advice you'd give to someone who was perhaps considering making that step at 16 to sign a scholarship? Like what should they consider, and should they go for it? What advice would they need to hear?
Misconception about academy football. I only can speak of what we deliver here. The football's important, but it's not the be-all and end-all. I suppose when I didn't work in an academy, I probably would have had a thought of it's just about the football, where they're trying to gear up a young boy from a young age, try and get on the pitch at the end of it. It's nothing like that. Education's just as important. The care while they're in the building, the aftercare. I think the better people and helping someone try and develop as a young kind of adult as just as big as important as it does in actually trying to get a footballer out on the Pirelli Stadium, like we've just touched on before. The numbers, the percentages, they are that small for footballers to come through an academy system, getting a first team. So that's why the importance of everything else has got to be so high, because not many go through, but we've got to help make better people. And I think that's a real tagline that us as Burton Albion, we try and kind of stick by: better people, better footballers.